Clubhouse. 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 Thank you. Clubhouse. Clubhouse. Thank you. Clubhouse. 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 Thank you.
Let's call this the Desolation of Happy Lion. My God, what a mistake that was to create two family trusts. FHHT for Happy Toke. I have no idea why Uncle Charlie made two trusts. I have no idea. I have no idea why he called one FHHT. Happy Lion is... Oh God. Is it Happy Lion? Saeed? Assad or something? Yeah. I think my uncle Charbel was thinking that he was quite creative with that. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a shame that it's all built on lies and deceit. There are two family trusts, and it was done around the time that my uncle Zulzul was going to take my uncle Charlie to NCAT in 2014, or maybe even before then. I get a feeling that it was done by Charlie because he was angry at his brothers and sisters and his father and his mother. Well, no, not his father. Well, he's angry at his... Ami Sharbel is angry at his father, Saeed. He never had a good thing to say about him. He loved his mother to a pathological degree. But something happened to him, perhaps similar to what happened to me a few months ago, but he got it into his head that there had to be a family trust. And to give him some credit, I get why he wanted to protect the property, because our family is quite destructive. But rather than destructive, they're just toxic. They all have temper problems. They all have issues with their emotions, and none of them can speak. And I'm speaking about my grandfather's brothers and my grandfather's sons and daughters, my aunties and uncles specifically. They cannot speak to each other because there's far too much trauma that they are repressing, and it comes out whenever they talk about money. Money in Bat Asad is a trigger. We have an extremely unhealthy relationship with money. Me included, all of my cousins, and all of my first cousins on my father's side, all of my aunties and uncles are bad with money. No, sorry. No, they are not bad with money. No, that is not it at all. It's not good or bad with money. Money triggers them. If they lose money, they get extremely upset. They need to protect it. They need to covet it to such an extent that they will do destructive things to other people to protect it. They do not have a healthy relationship with money. And the fact that there was such a toxic, confusing family trust made by Charlie to protect, quote unquote, his family's legacy, assets / money, shows you, the issue that they had. I don't know any other family that turns so venomous against each other when the patriarch died. Their father, my grandfather, Jidi Said, the way that they reacted was telling. The way that each brother, especially brother, son, my uncles, reacted was interesting. So my uncle Zulzul came back from France because he rightly, reasonably, justly expected to get money from his deceased father's assets. That's reasonable. Not that he didn't love his father and he's just a vulture now. No, 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 no. Remember, money's a trigger, right? So there were assets, and people wanted to know what to do with the assets because the assets represented money. And none of them could really decide what to do, I don't think. But obviously not. They can't talk to each other, so the question of what was going to happen with the assets was always going to devolve into a fight with brothers. And by the way, if you want to understand the brothers, read The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. How can I give you a small sort of description of it? It's basically a story about one of the worst families in Russia, kind of thing. I think Karamazov is a noun. Yeah. For me, Karamazov means like a bad, a broken person because of their father. Yeah, all the Karamazov brothers were traumatized, hurt, affected by their father, and they were all sort of criminals, except one who was holy and who was struggling with the morality of the world that he lives in and the ethics. And there's actually a beautiful mini story in the Brothers Karamazov called The Grand Inquisitor. And should I go into what the Grand Inquisitor is about real quick? The Grand Inquisitor. So during the Spanish Inquisition, I believe, or I'm just going to call it the Inquisition. I'm going to give you a very low resolution retelling of a story that I read twice, and the last time I read it was 5 years ago. So forgive me. Jesus Christ was a victim of the Inquisition. In the short story, he was imprisoned and he was going to be executed by the Grand Inquisitor. And Jesus Christ represented freedom, and the Grand Inquisitor represented the, let's say, church's overbearing nature. Right? Rather than people freely coming into Christ themselves, the Inquisitor, or the church, quote unquote, wanted them to see Christ through them, through the church. Go to church, do X, Y, Z, and Jesus Christ was this revolutionary rebel figure that demanded that people had an individual relationship with, not demanded that, people were free to come into God on their own, right? And freedom was an essential component of their faith. And the Grand Inquisitor was an authoritarian figure, right? So the contradiction in the story is that the Grand Inquisitor, right, executed Christ. And actually, I don't remember if he goes into detail about that or if you know, but I think that that's sort of like they were having a discussion, a back and forth, right? And the Grand Inquisitor was saying that basically Jesus Christ sinned against the church and had to be, dealt with in that way. And it's so interesting because I think it was Dostoevsky's kind of critique of the Russian Orthodox Church at the time, that if Christ was to come down to earth, like at that time, that the church would execute him or see him as a villain or a bad person. So I think one of the Karamazov brothers was struggling with, freedom to come into Christ in a world that is wretched. The brothers in the Brothers Karamazov, especially one particular brother, is my cousins and my uncles. My God, oh God, there was a part in this book that was written over 100 years ago, where one of the brothers came into a lot of money. I think he stole it from his father, and guess what he did with it? He went on a bender, drank a bunch of alcohol, and screwed around with a lot of women. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about that, yeah, wow, my God. A lot of people in our family are very Karamazovian, let's just say. Yeah, I always found that interesting. But yeah, the Karamazov, oh wow, yes. Their father died in the beginning of the book, or near the beginning, and the story was their sort of journey, sort of dealing with the sort of life that they lived in and the world that they live in. Themes of theodicy was really strong and prevalent in the brothers Karamazov. How can God exist in a world that's full of suffering? How can you be an angel when everything around you is sort of pushing you to be a Karamazov, right? Beautiful, lovely sort of story. Yeah, and I think all of my uncles are very Karamazovian and dealt with the death of their father in a very yeah, like I don't even know what the word is, but in a very wretched way, let me say, for lack of a better term. It was just appalling the way that they reacted and what happened. None of them went on benders or anything like that. That's not what I mean. It was far slower than that. My Uncle Charlie just basically used the rental income from one of the properties, the most expensive property, the flagship property, Redfern. The Redfern property that was located across the road from Redfern Park. Beautiful, amazing, classic sort of terrace house in Redfern, just a few houses away from St. Maroon's in Redfern. But all the rent was going into a bank account that the only person that had authority over it was my Uncle Charlie. And he ran the family trust for 10 years and wouldn't tell anyone anything about the goings on. How much money is in the family trust? Screw you. What can we do with the family trust? Screw you. Can we borrow money? No. Hey, Charlie, how are you? F off. You know what I mean? It was disgusting that they allowed my Uncle Charlie to basically just hoard his father's property for himself because he didn't understand investments. He was very cynical. He was a wretch himself. And he had no interest in doing anything for the benefit of the family, the actual benefit of the family. You see, that's the problem with an epileptic. He's delusional. His version of what is beneficial for the family is for my Auntie Noel to lose her house in Guildford without any help, put an extreme financial strain on my Uncle Zuzu, right? Because that's his money. That's his right, right? He had so much counting on being able to exercise his right to a property that's just as much his as it is his epileptic brother, epileptic young brother, Charlie, right? The correct thing to do at the time was always sell and divide, right? The fact that they didn't was the real dark kind of it was something that bothered everyone in the family and no one was okay with, and everyone just had to put up with it. And I could tell you now, they were doing a bad job of it. Everyone was not just upset, but fucking traumatized in their own way by what my Uncle Charlie did as the complete controller of his dead father's assets. He basically was financially abusing his brothers and sisters, right? Through his 100% absolute unwavering control of every single asset of his deceased father. That is actually domestic abuse. If you look into the legislation of what counts as abuse, financial abuse is right up there. It was disgusting what he did. And for him, financial power wasn't enough. My Uncle Charlie is an abuser. And his creation and control of the family trust and my grandfather's assets, his father's assets, was such a red flag. He didn't do it because he's a leader that cares. He did it because he has the instinct of an abuser, and to him, everything that he was doing was correct. Because in his mind, why should he give you money? It's his, and he knows what to do with it better than you. That's what an abuser does, and that's what an abuser thinks. That's why no one benefited at all. He gave people like little sort of bits and pieces here and there, like nothing. I was able to basically quench everyone's thirst. I realized that everyone was thirsty for that money, right? Not in a cruel way, but my God, imagine if you're struggling with money and you're about to lose your house, and you almost did, and your little brother is sitting on $5 million worth of unencumbered assets that belongs to you. It was disgusting what that vile creature Charlie did financially to his family. What he did to his wife, what he did to me, what he did to my brother, what he did to Tony, what he did to his mother, what he did to Ned. I hope it's clear now, just a side note about me and my dealings with Charlie. I couldn't be happier. He's in court. We're in court now, which is exactly where I want to be with Charlie. Because if you listen to that NCAT hearing, he doesn't do great in front of smart men with simple questions, And because I'm disputing the grounds, eventually he'll actually have to take the stand and he'll be cross-examined by my lawyer. And I cannot wait for that day because they'll ask him clear questions, why did you go to the police? Andrew didn't contact you directly. Why did you tell the police, X, Y, Z? And just all this sort of stuff. Did you know that, did you know that the message was intended? Did you know who the message was intended for? These are questions that the solicitor will ask him. It all hinges on the fact that my uncle gave the police a screenshot of a text message that I sent to a second cousin, to someone far removed from him, and I was referring to my dad, and he told the police, I was referring to him. I said something very violent and vile, And he said to the police, I haven't seen him in 15 years and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, he'll have to answer for all these questions in court now. Eventually. It'll probably be like next year. And AVOs work both ways. You know? I never want to see my Uncle Charlie again. I have no interest in seeing such a vile creature like that. And there's an AVO for his protection, which is okay, whatever. It's nice for him, you know? But it means that, like, by law, we can't interact, which is great, you know? And I could say anything I want about him to anyone, and that doesn't violate the AVO, you know? So it was an AVO that's going to get him in trouble that had absolutely no effect on me or what I could do. It didn't damage my reputation in any way, but rather it will lead to, you know, a review of the AVO where he will have to, you know, answer for what he did. Finally, you know, and this is just in relation to the AVO. Yeah. So for me, I never understood why there was a trust when I fully understood its creation and why there were two trusts and how they relate to each other. It's basically the creation of a hustler, of a criminal, of a deceitful actor, and of an abuser. The fact that the family followed that direction, you know, like Charlie, no, I'm doing the right thing. Let's, you know, they followed him, even though they they despised him, I should say, not hate. They despised him and distrusted his intentions. But they followed because they were abused. They didn't know what to do. Right? They don't know how, my aunts and uncles don't know what a trust is and how it works, right? But my uncle knows how to get that done. And he used that against his brothers and sisters. However, it's very easy to dismantle the family trust. Just it takes one beneficiary. So Majid, Ami Zuzu, Amti Ghada, Amti Nawal, Ami Maroon, or Ami Tone. Any one of those six needs to email maroonasad@icloud.com.au or whatever that email is. Basically saying, informing him that they want to sell their share of the trust. And because Charlie's a criminal, right? Even in that condition of the trust, they said that he has the director of the trust has a discretionary, so can say no to a beneficiary wanting to sell their share back to the trust, or sorry, rather can get paid out their share, right? But I'm making a global podcast, and Maroon has to have a very, very good reason as to why he doesn't want to give that, you know, beneficiary their share. If one beneficiary wants their share, then that share has to be valued, and then they need to get that money, right? And so the only way to get that money is to sell assets. So I have to sell assets, right? So Redfin. I hope that Danny Rader's son has held on to Penrith, the 64 and 66 Lethbridge Street property, and I hope he's trying to sell it on the commercial market as one lot for a profit, because that's the only way that they stand the chance of breaking even after all the mistakes that were made by Saeed and Majid when I left. yeah, if Danny wants help with me selling 64 and 66 Lethbridge Street on the commercial market for 4.5 to $5 million, I could definitely make that work. Um, yeah, that's sort of my wheelhouse. I'm a salesman, you know, as well as a lot of other things apparently. But they need to start thinking about slowly winding up Happy Lion and giving every beneficiary an equal share. So they sell Redfin, and whatever's left from Redfin after they repay the private loan, they split whatever that is amongst the seven beneficiaries. Okay, and then they sell 17B Villiers Street, and then they split that equally between the beneficiaries, and then we figure out what's going to happen with Auntie Rada, Danny, Chloe, and her husband Halim, whether they actually want to stay here, whether that's a good decision for them that they made on their own, that they weren't pressured into by bad actors. And we'll see whether it's fair for them to stay in that house, whether they need to pay rent if they want to stay in that house, or whether we should just sell that as well, and perhaps they could use their share to purchase their own property in Sydney, as well as renovate or do whatever they need to do with their shop in Lebanon. There's so many options that open up. There's so much potential for each individual beneficiary to benefit on their own once the beneficiaries begin getting paid out. And I think it's just as simple as that. You know, let me just end by, giving each member some ideas of things that they can do with their money once they get paid out. So for Amitone, he should definitely get his share, right? Because he does suffer from paranoid schizophrenia, but he isn't like completely, he can take care of himself. Right? He just has significant mental health issues, which means that he needs his money to be put in a separate account that someone else has authority over. And that is how that needs to play out. Full stop. Okay? I don't want, Tony to be treated like an invalid, right? He's able to have responsibility, but you just have to sort of be a proper guardian for him, you'll realize that Tony's instincts are good, right? My uncle Tony's instincts are quite good and positive, right? My uncle Charlie's instincts are quite negative and demonic, let's just say violent and vile. I want to say that, violent and vile. My uncle Charlie's instincts always go to that. Sexual, deviant, violent, aggressive, naturally. So yeah, and that will help Tony with his mental health, I think, to have more responsibility, to know that he's got like a nest egg, and yeah, it's great. Then there's Auntie Rada, I already talked about her. Auntie Nawal, easy. I think they got their property back in Guildford, thank God, right? And a good way for them to avoid, oh gosh, what's the word? What's the tax for development? Oh my God. Anyway, I forgot the word, but it's a tax you have to pay when you come into a big bunch of money, right? Capital gains tax. You can avoid it or offset it by putting your share straight into your house, and then that share turns into equity, right? So let's just say your share is 300,000. If you're worried about paying tax, capital gains tax on the 300,000, and you've got $500,000 owing on your house, you put the $300,000 in there. You own you only owe 200,000, but then you have more equity that you can borrow against after, and that won't be susceptible to capital gains tax. And everyone should do that, by the way. That's just the clever way to do it. But you have to have a good credit. Actually, no, you don't even have to have good credit. There's ways around you using your equity for investments if you're smart. Hami Maroon, all of his money will go into his house, and repaying a lot of the debt and money that he borrowed, and if there is money left over, well, hopefully there'll be money left over. If Penrith goes through well, hopefully it'll be good. The difference between them selling Penrith for a good price and not is, it's either each beneficiary gets 300,000 or like up to 1 million, for gosh sakes. So there's a lot of pressure on Danny to sell that and sell the property at Lethbridge Street if he hasn't already. I don't even know. But yeah, Saeed's dream is to do those glamping cabins at Mudgee. And that's not that hard, Saeed. Like, your first cabin will probably cost like less than 100,000, like 50,000, depending on how good and creative you are. So probably 100,000 for you, actually. Sorry, I've seen the way that you work, and I've seen, your business skills, and yeah, I'd suggest that whatever you'd want to do at Mudgee in terms of ecotourism and glamping, you'd get some sort of financial advisor or something. But I'm certainly never going to help you again, because you violated me in a very personal way. Same with your brother Majid. My dad. Oh God. So my dad's share is my share, not because I'm gonna take it, because I'm his son. Sorry, I actually have to emphasize that because for some reason my family got into their head that I wasn't his son and that I wanted to steal everything from him and that I had worse intentions than Charlie, my Uncle Charlie. God, do you know how insulting that is? My Uncle Charlie? I was just trying to help them. Oh, and I actually did. And they spat in my face. And that entire family, like Maroon side of the family, what they did to me was so disgusting and unfair when I was just trying to help them, that I don't believe I will ever work with them again, which isn't a bad thing, I think I'll definitely sue them. That's just something that has to happen because they affected me so significantly financially, and I have to recoup those losses somehow, And every time that Saeed has gone to court, he's lost, and I'll be suing his father mercilessly. By the way, sorry. My dad was a horrible sort of person in the past, but even he's proven himself to be more ethical than my Uncle Maroon, I have to say, Who else is there? Who am I? Oh, Hami Zuzu, dude. France, Airbnbs. Okay, sorry, I raised my voice. That is actually something that I want to help my uncle with. He doesn't realize how much untapped potential there is in continental Europe and dilapidated 16th, 17th century houses, right? That are dilapidated, that could be easily renovated for cheap, all right, and then either flipped or put on Airbnb. I want to be a Airbnb baron. I want to have, off the top of my head, these are words, these are goals. Relax. I want to own 10 Airbnbs in 10 years. Done. See? Isn't that hard? He's a little bit embarrassed. Oh, how am I going to do that? I'm broke. Yeah. 10 Airbnbs in continental Europe in 10 years. Yeah. Nah. No. No. No, 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 no. 10 Airbnbs in continental Europe in 5 years. France, Germany. Um, Look, I want to look in Eastern Europe. There's something about Airbnbs in Europe and road trips in Europe that are just so amazing. And I found myself really, really, really wanting to stay in Airbnbs and not really finding that many great quality of Airbnbs in a lot of countries. But so, for example, in Germany, great Airbnbs. So I get the sense that there's a lot of great Airbnb entrepreneurs in Germany. And then in France, yeah, a little bit of that as well, but still so many parts of France with untapped potential. There are castles in France that you can purchase, you can own yourself. Ami Maroon, Sebastian, Charbel, Mary, Martami, Yara, all of you guys for less than $50,000. We're all builders. Look what Ami Zuzu's family did in Châtillon-sur-Seine, right? That was a labor of love. They continue doing that, one a year or two a year. There you go. Do you know what will help with that? Jiddi's money, right? But I really want to help with that, and I might use some of my dad's money to invest in that. I want to do Kuka or not. Kuka is just an idea and an exercise. To me, it's almost like a case study. Yeah, the idea behind it really is create. Yeah, let me pause. Okay. So the idea is to create beautiful, rich, lovely places, accommodation that you can access through Airbnb. It's easy and convenient. And each location is special in and of itself. And we lean in to the terroir of each location, right? And I mean that. The wine, the taste of wine is directly influenced or is greatly impacted by the quality of the soil, right? Like the soil dictates the kind of grape that you're going to get. And so the location of the house, is going to dictate what kind of place it's going to be. And I love it sort of being free form and open, maybe in Mudgee it's cabins, and Kukumajira it's cabins, right? But in countryside in France, it's like a dilapidated 17th century house. Or perhaps somewhere in the corner of Germany, there's like or Italy, there's a rundown castle, right? That is selling for like under 50K. That really the only people that can bring it to its full potential are passionate builders, let's just say, right? Kind of like us. Yeah, that's good. And then there's obviously just the basic stuff, which we know, which is property development, I really want to sort of have a go at the quick flip option. I want to sort of see, how hard it is to find houses in Maryland's for, say, 800,000. Small houses, dilapidated houses, quick flip, put in $50,000 to $100,000 in them, sell it, 6 months later or a year later for like 1.1 million or something, or $1 million. And then you just sort of do that repeatedly, and you alternate if you want, sometimes it's a quick flip. Sometimes it's, a long renovation, and sometimes it's a proper big development, a duplex, townhouses, apartments, whatever. That's what we were going to do before. But we can't work together, can we? I think that's clear. And I think that what the family wants, which is for everyone to be together, will be achieved once you disconnect and detach from each other financially. Then you're all independent and you'll come back to each other freely, like Jesus Christ intended, not like the Grand Inquisitor or my Uncle Charlie, right? Creating that family trust that you'd have to bow down and adhere to. Nah, we're not doing it that way. We're doing it the right way. We're doing it the Christ way. We're doing it for Tony. All right. Love you. Bye.